Kingdom Hearts Chi was originally released online on the PC in Japan on July 18, 2013. A redone version of the game, titled Unchained, was released for mobile devices in Japan on September 3, 2015, and in America on April 7, 2016. As Unchained was the only version available in America, I'll be using this version when talking about the plot of the game. Unchained is a prequel to the entire Kingdom Hearts series, taking place right before the Keyblade War. Let's jump right in. Now, the cool thing about Unchained is that in the game, you aren't playing as someone like Sora, Riku, Roxas, or anyone else. You are playing yourself. You will be involved with the events prior to the Keyblade War. As such, I will be calling the main character the player, as your name of him or her can be whatever you want. I'll also say that the game sends you to different worlds from other games, but as they don't affect the main story much, I'll skip them to save time. The story starts off as a book opens and Kairi's grandmother tells a young Kairi about the time when people fought over the light and darkness was born. You then create your character as you enter your dive to the heart. The player then selects one of 5 unions to side with: Anguus, Leoportus, Unicornus, Ursuis, and Vulpes. God, I butcher names so much. You pick your union and are engulfed by darkness, summoning your Keyblade to break free. The player then arrives in Daybreak Town, where they come across a dark side. Depending on which union you picked, one of the 5 foretellers will come in to save you. For the purposes of this video, it will be Ava. The dark side escapes with Ava chasing after it. A cat-like creature named Chirati explains to the player about the Heartless and the player's role as a Keyblade wielder, to seek out the light. Chirati explains that his role, and other Chirati's roles as well, is to help and watch over the Keyblade wielders. Ava returns and tells the player that they will need to team up with other players to defeat stronger Heartless, like the dark side. After defeating the dark side together, Ava explains that they need to not trust any Seekers of Darkness, but to ally themselves with Guardians of Light, as they travel the worlds to gather the light. The player and Chirati then start to head out to other worlds. We then see a Chirati being born. They are born in a flask that their master used to bring them into the world. Chirati then explains to the player about the 6 apprentices, these being Aced, Ava, Gola, Envy, Ira, and Luxu. That before Chirati's master disappeared, he bestowed his 6 followers with new names and gave 5 of them a book of prophecy, these 5 becoming foretellers. Something written on the last page of the book shocked them. The war in that place will lead to the defeat and destruction of the light. The world will be engulfed in eternal darkness. In order to stop this, the 5 foretellers use the power in the books, the power that all the Keyblade wielders now possess. Chirati also explains that, though the 5 foretellers share the same goal, they do not share the same will. Later on, our Chirati meets up with another Chirati and they talk about each other's Keyblade wielders. The player meets up with other Keyblade wielders and they tell you about a new kind of Heartless that appeared in the town. They invite the player to help them defeat this new Heartless threat. Returning, the player learns that the person that they met and befriended was killed in battle. Our Chirati meets up with the other Chirati again, who is currently fading away, its player having been erased by the darkness. And if the player is killed, their Chirati will disappear too. Ava arrives and says that because of the Keyblade wielders, they've gathered a great deal of Lux, which are sort of like light particles, but that the darkness is still approaching, which Chirati asks if there really is a traitor among the 5 foretellers, to which Ava doesn't give a straight answer. Elsewhere, while the player is sleeping, we see 5 foretellers conversing with a man in a black coat, revealing the player to have been having a nightmare. Our Chirati is approached by another Chirati who asks if they gave the player the dream, the Chirati saying that they are now enemies with our Chirati. The player meets a new character called Ephemer and witnesses him defeat some Heartless. The two introduce themselves, and though they are from different unions, they decide to become friends. Ephemer tells the player that the Lux that they recover are not the light of the worlds from the fairy tale, and that the worlds are just an illusion. The wielders actually recovering the light from this world. He explains that they cannot travel to the real worlds that connect to theirs, so they create worlds that never would have appeared otherwise. Ephemer saying that the source of the illusionary worlds are from the books of prophecy that the foretellers possess. The player tells Ephemer about the nightmare that they had and they decide to investigate together, our Chirati discussing with another Chirati that they are getting close to the truth. The player and Ephemer decide to investigate the main clock tower, this being the domain of the foretellers. Searching for the room from the dream, the two of them reach a dead end and decide to stop for the day, promising that they'll come back to search some more tomorrow. Later that night, the player tells Chirati about Ephemer, Chirati being happy that the player has made a new friend. However, we see Ephemer returning to the clock tower alone, investigating the place himself. The player waits for Ephemer at the Fountain Plaza, but he never shows up. Chirati arrives and comforts the player, saying that Chirati will always be the player's friend. As the two hug, we see a Dream Eater symbol on Chirati's back. Flashback. We see Ephemer and Ava together at the Fountain Plaza. He asks Ava about the secrets of the Book of Prophecy, but Ava refuses to answer. Ephemer tells her that he made a friend from another union, Ephemer heading out to get some rest for the next day. Ava says to herself that if the worst happens, she can leave everything to the children like Ephemer who are not bound to the unions, calling them her dandelions. The player has a dream of meeting up with Ephemer and the two investigate the tower together. Ephemer says that he'll be waiting and disappears. The player wakes up in their bed and Charity asks if they had a nice dream. The player tells Charity that they want to search the tower for Ephemer, but Charity says that they shouldn't. The player ignores Charity and goes to the clock tower. In the clock tower, they come across Ava and the player says that they came looking for Ephemer. Ava then summons her Keyblade and challenges the player to a fight. After the fight, Ava tells the player to head home. As the player heads out, Ava realizes that this is the friend that Ephemer was telling her about. Back in the player's room, Ava appears before Charity and asks him if Charity is the one who showed the player the dream about Ephemer. Charity saying that it wasn't him. Ava instructs Charity to protect the player from the nightmares. The player then meets a new character named Scold, who wonders why all of the unions are competing over the Lux. After all, they all share the same goal of protecting the light. Skull says that she is a friend of Ephemer and is in the same union as him. She tells the player that one day, Ephemer quit the union. Skull also says that Ephemer came to her in her dreams and told her to seek out the player. She asks the player if they know anything, and the player says that Ephemer appeared in their dreams as well. Skull and the player decide to go back to the clock tower, which the player was supposed to go with Ephemer. When they feel a powerful quake, they go off to investigate. Scold and the player witnesses Envy and Aced fighting throughout the town. Scold thinking that what Ephemer said about the foretellers was true. Scold also reveals that Ephemer said to her in the dream that the end of the world was coming. The two then come across a new kind of Heartless, demanding Lux. After fighting the Heartless off, a Dark Charity approaches them, also demanding Lux. This Dark Charity having been tainted by the darkness. Charity summarizes that the Heartless that Scold and the player fought used to be human, Keyblade wielders who were weak and taken in by the darkness. Charity demands to know who the Dark Charity's player is, but the Dark Charity leaves. In the clock tower, Scold and the player travel further in than the player did before. They find themselves inside of the foreteller's room. Ira then appears before them and berates Charity for letting the two in here. When asking about Ephemer, Ira says that he was in conflict with his union's plans and had him disappear. Though Charity tries to stop them, the player angrily attacks Ira and they fight. Ira manages to defeat the player though, who reveals himself to actually be Ava. Ava heals the player and tells them that the end of the world really is coming. Ava reveals that she's been preparing superior Keyblade wielders from each union to last in the next world. Ava also says that she asked Ephemer to lead this group, the Dandelions. She asks Scold and the player to join the Dandelions. Scold agrees, but the player is worried though about the Keyblade wielders who don't get chosen as Dandelions. Ava says that there will be a Keyblade war. The player explains that they can't join the Dandelions because they don't want to leave the other Keyblade wielders behind. Scold still decides to join and the two agree to meet each other again soon. Ava assembles the new members of the Dandelions, including Scold, and tells them that they are the hope, that she too will soon be swallowed by her own darkness and join the conflict that is approaching. She tells her Dandelions to not participate in the battle, but instead depart for the outside world. A few months later, the player witnesses different Keyblade wielders from different unions fighting each other over the Lux. The player tries to intervene, but the others keep on accusing each other to be the darkness that is stealing the light. Skull then arrives and tells them all to stop fighting. Aced then arrives and tells them that the only thing that they can trust is the unity of each other's union, and that the darkness in other people's hearts can only be proved through battle. The player and Aced then fight, but the player is defeated by him. Ira arrives and the two argue with each other. Aced says that he'll build an army, banish the four other foretellers, and unify all the unions under him. He then leaves and the other Keyblade wielders depart as well. Ira tells them that the conflict is unavoidable and that he is fighting so that a victor is not born. Ira departs and the player passes out. Back in the player's room, Scold says that this world is getting worse every day. Charity tells her that the masters have fallen apart and that they've all changed. The player wakes up and asks Scold if she's seen Ephemer, but she has not. Scold also tells the player that Ava has been missing and that they think that Gola might know something. They go out to find him. Scold and the player find Gola, who tells them that the 5 foretellers were the apprentices of the Master of Masters, and that he is the only one who can stop the upcoming conflict. But Gola reveals that the Master disappeared one day, with only the 6th apprentice, Luxu, knowing his location. Luxu has also gone missing as well, and Ava is searching for him. We see Ava confronting Luxu on a green hill, and when asked by Ava what he's been doing, Luxu simply says that he's been watching. Luxu reveals that he was not given a book of prophecy from the Master of Masters, but instead was told to watch this world end and then set off. Luxu talks about the lost page from the Book of Prophecy and the Master's intention. Ava demands to know what was written on the lost page and thinks that Luxu is the traitor. Luxu then summons his Keyblade. Back with the others, Gola reveals that the lost page states, "Unable to permit disharmony, you will be disappointed by fate and lose sight of true strength. Misreading the truth, you will venture forth in secrecy." Elsewhere, Luxu tells Ava the truth about the traitor and says that maybe the master is less interested in the fate of the world and more interested in finding out how the disciples will guide the keys. Angry at Luxu's words, Ava summons her Keyblade. Gola reveals more from the lost page that says, "And then with that one strike, a bell will toll for the final battle, and the battle will begin at last, and the time shall be chosen." The bell then suddenly rings as Luxu and Ava fight. Scold says that she is going back to the Dandelions and they say their goodbyes. The player then comes across the Dark Tutory who tells them that they've been gathering the sins of the world and starting turning this form of darkness into power. This all being the Master's intention. The Dark Tutory reveals that they were born from the player's darkness, then belonging to the player. The Heartless then appears and the Dark Tutory promises to show them a dream. He also reveals himself to be a nightmare and Chirity to be a spirit. After defeating the Heartless, Dark Chirity absorbs them and transforms into a giant nightmare. The player manages to defeat him though, and he starts to disappear, saying that they'll meet in another dream. A few days later, the Keyblade War begins, with the player finding themselves caught in the middle. The player fights 4 of the Foretellers, not fighting the foreteller that belongs to your union, only being able to fend each of them off. As the war goes on, more and more Keyblade wielders get killed and their hearts released. At the end of the battle, the player lies on the ground alone. The battle being over and everybody dead, Chirity arrives as the giant light shines down on the player as Scold appears. Ephemer then shows up, the player saying that he broke their promise, but is happy to see him again. After the credits, the player wakes up in the world of Enchanted Domain, not knowing what happened. Chirity asking if the player had the same dream again. The player has been having this dream over and over again since that day, this day being the day when Ava invited the player to the Dandelions and said goodbye to Scold. They come across a wall of thorns and decide to head back. Elsewhere, Maleficent says that all went well and wonders where Pete went off to. But she also says that not even Sora and his friends can meddle in this world, not when nuisances won't get in. A little bit after this, the game was reworked and changed to Union Cross. As the player completes certain missions, you'll unlock scenes that show what happened to the Dandelions after the Keyblade War. Ephemer and Scold meet up at the Keyblade Graveyard and wait for 3 others to join them. Flashback. We see Ava with the Master of Masters. The Master tells Ava to create the Dandelions, who will keep the light alive. We see Ephemer meeting up with Ava, who tells him that 5 other Dandelions, including him, have been chosen. These 5 will lead each union in the future. We see Ava in the Master of Masters again, and tells her that it is still necessary to keep the unions. Also, the annihilation is to be kept a secret from everyone but the 5 union leaders. Back in the present, the 3rd leader meet up with Ephemer and Scold, revealing himself to be Ventus. We see Ephemer and Scold talk with Chirity and says that the player keeps having terrible nightmares. Ephemer says that he senses that the darkness in this world is different from the darkness of their old world. They ask Chirity to continue looking after the player who departs. Ephemer says that he feels more and more uneasy when something happens in the new world that diverges from the old one. We see again Ephemer with Ava, who gives him a book. Back at the Keyblade Graveyard, Ventus converses with Ephemer and Scold. The 4th leader then arrives, a mysterious boy named Blaine. To clarify, in the official English translation he is called Brain, but that's stupid, so I'm calling him Blaine for this video. I apologize if I'm totally wrong by doing this. We see flashbacks of when the conflict started and the player fought against Aced. The player then wakes up in bed, having had another dream. We see Ephemer and Ava again. She explains that each of the leaders will receive a set of laws that they must follow. She tells him to go off and start preparations for the new world. And there, Ava will have them experience the same things that they did in this world, but the new world will be able to go on without total annihilation in its future. She says that she will have all of the memories of the annihilation erased from the members of the Dandelions, except for the 5 leaders. Back at the Keyblade Graveyard, Blaine wonders if the laws are really set in stone. He also wonders if it's okay to trust the laws and having to lie to everyone. Ephemer and Scold flash back to when they met up with the player after the Keyblade War. In the present again, Ephemer says that they do have to keep it a secret, saying that he doesn't want to make them remember that tragedy. We then follow the journey of a girl named Strelitzia, who likes to sit alone with her Chirity. She talks about how she's seen the player various times while on her journey, having crossed paths with them every now and again, each time wanting to strike up a conversation with the player, but never being brave enough. But still always hoping that she and the player will talk together someday. We see Strelitzia, oh my god, I'm just butchering that name, being approached by Ava, who asks her to become the 5th leader. Later on, Strelitzia... You know, I'm just gonna call her, Stressel. Yeah, I'm just gonna call her Stretzel. Later on, Stretzel wonders whether or not to become a union leader. While her Chirity says that she shouldn't tell anyone about the upcoming annihilation, Stretzel does want to tell the person who she might have a thing for. She decides to wait at the Fountain Plaza tomorrow and invite them to join the Dandelions, but also decides not to tell them about the annihilation stuff. The next morning, Chirity says that he spots them and they go to an abandoned room. They don't find the person that they are looking for, and before they go outside, Stretzel is suddenly attacked and mortally wounded, this attacker stealing Stretzel's book. Chirity apologizes for not being able to protect her as Stretzel's oh, I'm butchering this. Limps outside. She wishes that she had talked to the player. They then disappear as her heart travels up to the sky. Back in the Keyblade graveyard, they wait for the 5th leader to finally arrive. The 5th leader then appears and we see that it is a boy named Lariam. Now that all 5 leaders have assembled, they go to the Master's room in the clock tower. They also say that they should avoid panic by telling everyone that the foretellers are doing well. Blaine comes across a book that shows them Dream Eater spirits, Blaine suggesting that they lift the ban on partners for everyone. These spirits can eat up the nightmares and stop everyone from remembering the tragedy that happened. Everyone agrees on this plan. Blaine gets started on creating them and gives Ephemer and the others a list of things that he needs. Lariam decides to stay behind and help Blaine. Later on, the player is given a Dream Eater spirit partner. And that's it, everyone, at least for now. Union Cross is a game that is continually updated with new story content, but this is everything that's been released so far, and wow, this took longer than I thought. We were introduced to a new world and so many new characters. And the biggest question is, what the hell does this all mean? Who is the traitor? Who is Luxu and the Master of Masters? Did Lariam kill Stretzels? I apologize for butchering her name. I truly love her. And yeah, how is Ventus and Marluxia somebody here? So many questions. Maybe these questions will be answered next time on Kingdom Hearts Back Cover. See you then.